So my talk today is titled, "The Flowers Are Speaking, Reconnecting with the Sacredness in Nature and the Love at the Heart of the World." And I want to start my story with you by stepping outside of time as we know it, back into deep time, millions of years ago. To understand the flowers as our elders, we must stretch our sense of time to begin to grasp the immensity of the eons of their wisdom. We all likely remember a linear timeline we were shown in school, where our human existence was a little tiny blip on the right side of the chart, and then maybe the dinosaurs were a little bigger chunk somewhere in the middle, but otherwise, for me at least, it was all really fuzzy. I just never really grasped it. So, briefly, our written history as humans is only 5,000 years old. And our human prehistory covers everything from when agriculture began around 10,000 years ago to the eons when we were hunter-gatherers, and all the way back to when our first Homo family ancestors were creating the first stone tools 3 million years ago. But the flowers are over 100 million years old, and the first ones actually as old as 150 million or even a little older. So it's really hard to grasp how much longer they have been around than we have, navigating the tremendous changes in their ecosystems in an ever-changing climate, continuously evolving to meet whatever challenges would arise. So there's one more important date in the flowers story that I'm going to share. You have most likely heard of the asteroid impact that happened 66 million years ago, and that's the one that killed the dinosaurs. The flowers were around before that, but they were only a minority of plant life, and before the extinction event, just as there were only a few small mammals around as well. And after the impact and the resulting devastation that killed over 70% of the life on Earth, the flowers exploded. They took over the new real estate that was opened up, and over the next 3 to 5 million years, they made leaps and took chances and evolved into a myriad of new forms, and they were ripe for rapid growth, and they diversified everywhere, exploding in an explosive growth that changed the world. The secret to the flowers' success was collaboration, not survival of the fittest or competition like we've been taught. The flowers' collaboration with insects had started well before the asteroid impact, and afterwards, when the land was ready to support new life once again, the flowers developed relationship with more insects, birds, animals than ever before. Flowers, with the love and energy they poured into their fruits, provided food, more energy than had ever before been available on our planet. Fruits that came in the form of seeds and nuts and legumes and fleshy fruits and vegetables, allowing the growth of bigger brains and more complex animals. Flowers were pivotal to the rise of most life forms around us today, including ourselves. In a very literal sense, in fact, we have evolved because of the flowers. In the science world, flowering plants are called angiosperms, and there is actually a theory in anthropology called the primate angiosperm coevolution theory. I apologize, bear with me. That says, after you remove all that scientific jargon, that our earliest primate ancestors evolved to look for flowers, to eat their fruits. They learned to focus their vision on the flowers at arm's length, and then to reach for them with their hands. The angiosperms created these flowers and fruits to help us evolve and share the world and collaborate with them. Their desire to reach out to other beings started a cascade of collaborative creation that our world had never seen before. In a poetic or mystical sense, the flowers are nothing more and nothing less than the greatest love story ever told. One of the big statements I like to make and share is this: the flowers have dreamed us into being. For me, this is a mystical way of understanding the deeper purpose, the love story behind our entwined evolution. It's about how flowers' desire for us envisioned our future and how these dreams can change our DNA, something our science simply calls random mutations. But they're not random. They are the manifest story of desire and love that is at the root of the life force of creation itself. We all know our dreams can affect our future, even if usually in ways we cannot predict. And the flowers know this too. They dreamed of beings, including us, who would work with them to endlessly create new life. When I was small, I would lie on the grass with my dad, picking dandelions and gazing at the clouds. We would blow on their puffballs and make wishes and tell each other stories of the fantastic beings we saw up in the sky. If I could remember what those wishes were, I'd love to know if they came true or if they're still becoming. Sometimes, even often, our dreams don't come to fruition in a single lifetime, but they grow and are carried forward from generation to generation. The flowers recognized a spark of potential in our collaborations with each other. They created beauty to attract us, and we simultaneously developed a love for their beauty that sits deeply in our DNA and our soul. Dr. Richard Prume, an evolutionary biologist and ornithologist, says, "Beauty is a co-evolved attraction in which desire and the objects of desire have shaped one another." I adore this as a definition of a love story. The flowers and our ancestors were drawn to each other the way lovers were drawn to each other. This courtship between us is about the love at the heart of creation and at the heart of the world. It is the longing for life itself. Okay, now with that long story of our entwined evolution tucked into our hearts, I would like to ask you to contemplate with me how we can begin to regain our connection with the flowers. When we were wild, still more animal than human, the flowers guided us. They would lead us to food and be food for us and show us the next step on our path. We would watch and listen to them intimately, knowing they would guide us to what we needed. Each time our environment changed, long before we felt the need to move, the flowers would already be leading us to where we needed to go, usually slowly over generations. And our prehistoric ancestors, not all that long ago, in terms of the long story, used to talk to and receive messages from plants intuitively and in dreams. How to know and understand and hear their wisdom was taught, rather than just learning by their traits by rote memory. We believed as whole societies that plants could communicate with us and that we could receive messages from them. But several hundred years or more of preaching the gospel of science has separated us so far away from the plant realm that we no longer trust our senses and intuitive knowing. And there's nothing wrong with science, but there's been a cost. A great silencing has happened between us and all other life forms on this planet because of our hubris that we are the only fully intelligent life. To consider how the flowers are sentient, how their intelligence is vastly different than ours, requires stepping outside of our civilized, logical, linear thinking. We only know what we can sense and perceive as humans, but the world is much vaster than we can comprehend. Other beings, animals and plants, have senses we don't have, and wider ranges of the senses that we do have. I don't have time in this talk to share much of the latest science on plant intelligence with you, but it is rapidly expanding. And if you're interested in learning more, I can recommend a new book to you called The Light Eaters by Zoe Schlanger, a journalist for The Atlantic. She pulls together all the best and newest revelations in an enjoyable, readable format, and not being a scientist, she's willing to make some assumptions and mystical conclusions that the scientists won't. Okay, now I would like us to imagine together what stepping into the flower's realm might be like. First and foremost, we must slow down and step into silence with them. I like to say, the path of the heart is learning to live at the speed of a flower. There are 3 other quotes I want to share with you that capture the poetic, mystical essence of how we can experience the flower's language. From Zoe Schlanger's book, The Light Eaters. Perhaps plants are also speaking in movement, in electricity, or even in the flow of fluid in their bodies that clearly produces audible clicks, though all of this is yet to be understood. As soon as we reorient away from human modes of expression, we open ourselves to other worlds of being. Language may already be there for a plant. In her book, Thus Spoke the Plant, Monica Gagliano, a plant scientist and evolutionary ecologist, says, "When we learn to listen to plants without the need to hear them speak, a language that we have forgotten emerges. It is a language beyond words, one that does not wander or pretend or mislead. It is a language that conveys its rich and meaningful expression by bypassing the household of our mind and directly connecting one spirit to another." And my favorite, from the author and herbalist Stephen Herod Buhner, that we take plants in through our nose or our skin or our eyes or our tongue instead of our ears does not make their language less subtle or sophisticated or less filled with meaning. For most of my life, I would talk to plants and consider them alive and conscious, but I didn't really think of them as intelligent or sentient, to have their own agency, able to respond to me and their surroundings with deliberate awareness and desire. Even though my heart was speaking with them, my mind for decades believed the cultural norm that plants were not sentient. Over the years, after taking various workshops on creativity and intuition, and after taking a course on making flower essences several years ago, I started to meditate with the flowers, and messages would come to me that were clearly from them and not from myself. I was afraid to share them with anyone, though, for a long time. The fear of being called crazy went very deep. It took a few years to trust the flowers' messages through a process of prayer and listening and discernment. I would take pictures of all the flowers as I worked with them, and I laminated them, and I started carrying them around and offering their messages. And then someone suggested I make an oracle deck, and 2 years ago, I did a small print run of that oracle deck that had come pouring through me. The flowers were so eager to speak, but they weren't done with me. They wanted their story told in a book, and for me to tell my story with it. And I know now the flowers have been calling me, asking me to remember who we are together for all my life. What I have learned is how important it is to allow my imagination and trust my intuition so that I can open to the flowers' messages and hear them. And anyone can do this. I do not have a particularly special talent, I promise you. I grew up in a very logical household and was often told, "Oh, that's just your imagination." And so I learned to dismiss mine at an early age. I still recall, though, the first time, only a decade or so ago, when I allowed myself to consider that it didn't matter if it was my imagination or not, that it was still real in one realm or another. There are centuries of wisdom suppressed in this way, most often the ancient earth wisdom that was the women's knowledge that was once handed down from generation to generation. I have 2 more quotes for you. From Dale Pendle, a poet and ethnobotanist, "Though the gods have the power of speech, more often they choose a flower or a plant." And I love this from the trial of Joan of Arc. When the inquisitor said to her, "You say God speaks to you, but it is only your imagination," Joan of Arc famously replied, "How else would God speak to me if not through my imagination?" For me, listening to the flowers is a reciprocal process. The flower chooses me first, like an invitation. A mutual magnetism is present, an interest, a noticing, not unlike an attraction to another person. And then we begin to play. I observe everything I can about them, take in their essence, I photograph them, I sit with them, allow my feelings and memories and emotions to be stimulated by them. I read about them, their history, their lore, their growth habits, and their traits. And then I sit down to free write, to just put whatever words come to me with all these feelings and experiences of the flower swirling in and around my heart and my mind. Most importantly, I ask the flower what the flower wants to teach me. Asking opens a door between realms. Messages will come through that I know are more than my own reflections. Sometimes this process happens in a single day, and sometimes it takes weeks. It can be a direct message. Sometimes it is just more of a general knowing. I think of it as just listening with that creative, intuitive part of my being, something that we all have the capacity to do. My rational brain is a great servant, but a poor master. It is my heart that leads the way when I am listening to the flowers. For our ancient ancestors, listening to the flowers was a matter of kinship and survival, as natural as observing and listening to the phases of the moon, the cycles of the seasons, and the voices of their human kin. I am simply rediscovering a long-buried way of communicating with the world we live in, and I am still a novice. Have you ever been in a forest or a garden or with a single flower and had an idea or a feeling pop into your head? What if the flower or plant felt your emotions, your longings, and responded to you? We know animals can do this. Why not plants and flowers? One day when I was feeling upset and more emotional than usual, I walked out into my garden and I noticed my lavender plants seemed especially fragrant and vibrant that day, calling me to them. And they were so comforting. Another time, with my favorite lavender plant, I felt like I was sitting with a wise grandmother, or better yet, a whole council of grandmothers. They said to me, "Come sit by the hearth and let us help you remember. Remember when you trusted your deep knowing. Let my scent awaken those ancient pathways, open your intuition, and lead you to your heart." With abilities to perceive the world around them far beyond what we can sense, what else might the flowers know? Are they aware of the future threats to their community? Can they predict the weather better than we can? Do they know where they need to go in a changing climate? Can they feel the long story of the land they live on, its history? Can they sense in the dirt the spirits of the people and animals who lived there before? The questions are endless. The flowers wooed our human ancestors, fed them, loved them, taught them to desire their beauty, and now the flowers speak to our souls. They lead us back to ourselves, to our hearts, and they tell us we will need to trust them again to be our maps in a changing world. They are, and they always will be, the hands of our sacred earth, the maps to our hearts. The flowers are speaking, and we are called to listen and learn their wild language so they can share their feral wisdom with us. They tell us that our world needs all of our unrestrained, unindoctrinated longing for life itself to guide us as we hurtle our way into the next unfolding of this planet, one generation, one life at a time. So I have a short meditation to share to invite you into the flowers world with me. So if you want to take a moment and get yourself settled, and close your eyes, soften your gaze, take a deep breath. Imagine you are walking through a wildflower meadow. It is large and spacious and ringed by ancient oaks and soft pine trees. The sky is blue, full of billowing clouds, and a gentle breeze comes towards you, carrying subtle floral fragrances. A path winds through the flowers in a spiraling pattern for you to walk on. On each side, there is a riot of color. Every wildflower you have ever met is here, along with many more that you don't know. All sizes, every color, some blooming, some already making their seeds, in a glorious celebration of flower song and flower dance. You begin to step more lightly, almost skipping, arms raising, as if you want to join the butterflies and flit among them. You notice one or two of them resonating more deeply with you, catching your attention, and you are, excuse me, and you are drawn to them as though they are a lover. And in fact, they are. They are offering all their love and desire for life to you and inviting you to share yours with them. Now, imagine that you are in this same glorious meadow, but this time you are a wildflower. Take a minute to imagine which flower you are, and if not a specific kind of flower, then imagine if you are tall or short, what color you are, and if you have a fragrance. Being a flower, rather than an animal and able to move, you are rooted, committed here to where you first germinated. You can't run from this environment. You are immersed. Your porousness is extreme. You are open, with every part of your body fully able to sense, hear, see, taste, touch, and smell everything around you. You feel the sun rising above the trees in the morning, and the sunbeams begin shining on your leaves. You feel it soak into your being and shine on the face of your flower that is opening to its warmth or turning to face its beams. You feel yourself generating and creating energy, turning it into sugar and sending it wherever it is needed in your plant body, down to your roots and out to all the fungal beings and neighbors in your community. The usual morning chatter surrounds you in a riot of sensory input about the weather, who is thriving, who is struggling, who is feeding who, if there are any visitors or diseases who are a bit too voracious in their appetites. You feel the vibrations and buzzing of the bees nearby. You sense their presence, even seeing the black and yellow bodies coming closer, answering the call of your nectar. Nectar that is now pulsing up into your flowers in anticipation of their visit, their dance with you. There is a new excitement throughout the meadow today because not only are the bees and spiders and wasps and ants and mice and squirrels and rabbits and deer and more visiting today, there is a human, a large animal on two legs towering over you, walking through the meadow. You feel a strange yearning to reach out to this being that is moving among you. You sense their awe, their desire to know you, to understand your world, and love pours from your flowers the same way your nectar pours out for the bees. You instinctively know it has always been this way, this desire to reach out and connect, to heal each other, to work together, to feed each other, to always create more life together. The wind swirls and gently blows over this vibrant, colorful gathering, blessing you and all who are here. Thank you, everyone.
Session that is just really engaging. So if you enjoyed this talk, check it out.